Three cheers for Autoists. I don't know exactly when it happened. I've not got that far yet in my weekly enterprise of transcribing parts of past issues of the Vermilion News. At this time, I'm immersed in the September 1912 news, and there is no indication that my grandfather, the editor of the paper, owned an auto at that time. But I'm very sure that soon thereafter, he, like numerous others of his day, succumbed to the siren's call of owning a horseless carriage. Or it may have been my grandmother. But as one can plainly see by the very fact that he posed for the accompanying photograph, seated at the wheel of a 1924 Hudson Essex two-door coach, surrender he did, with neither a bang nor a whimper. These shadows were captured along Vermilion's very grand street, directly in front of his print shop, now the local history museum. This is not the only photo I have of him seated in the driver's seat of a car. I have another where he is similarly seated at the wheel of a Model T Ford. In that photo, he was parked in front of what at the time was Rudy Mock's Sunset Studio, photo studio, also on Grand Street. That was north and just across the tracks from the site of this photo. Currently, 2020, the approximate site of the jailhouse bed and breakfast. Methinks that when he, although at first begrudgingly, answered the call of the age of the automobile, he never looked back. He had metamorphosed from electric train commuter into a full-fledged Autoist, note to chapeau. My mother Ella and her sister, my Aunt Alice, are in the back seat. They appear to be thrilled at the prospect of taking a day trip in their dad's Hudson. While I have no real evidence to support the thought, I suspect, as earlier indicated, that my grandmother Bessie may have been the one who had first heard the aforementioned siren's call. Unlike the photographs of Gramps looking ready to race down the street, I have none of my grandmother in or around any auto. However, I seem to recall a tale my mother told me some years ago about a day when Bessie, her mom, was driving down Liberty near the corner of Vermilion's very grand street when she lost control of the vehicle. This was probably in the early 1930s. It was after the Standard Oil Company had built a new service station on that corner. That station eventually became Glenn Foper's Auto Parts store. Anyway, Grandma reportedly drove right into the building. She wasn't hurt, but her ego as an autoist was apparently irrevocably damaged. The incident, of course, never made the news, and I doubt that she ever drove again. My mother, however, was a different story. She must have taken after her father when it came to her enthusiasm for driving. Our father seldom drove. He really had no need. We lived 2 blocks away from the print shop, and the local pub, currently Rudy's, was located in between those locations. So he just walked. He only drove when it was absolutely necessary, but Mom, she just liked to drive. To get the entire picture, which, looking back, is quite amusing, our mother was, at best, about 5'3" in high heels. In 1956, she bought the only new car our family ever purchased. It was a 2-tone green Pontiac Chieftain from Kyle Motors. Vermilionite Bob Kyle likely remembers the car as well as I do. It was a 4-door with a hydromatic transmission. It didn't have power steering or power brakes. The top of Mom's head was about even with the top of the steering wheel. To see the road, she looked through the rungs on the steering wheel. But boy, when Mom kicked that baby into passing gear, it would go, as some are wont to say, like a bat out of a word that ends with 2 L's. Mom was also an autoist. I learned to drive with that car. It took me 2 tries to get my license because I had such a hard time maneuvering that tank to parallel park. I was never as infatuated with driving a car as either my grandfather or my mother. My first car, as I had mentioned in the past, was a motorcycle. Nonetheless, I can readily understand their enthusiasm for the automobile. It beat riding in a crowded electric urban car to get from one place to another, and it certainly beat the travails of having to own and care for a horse and buggy. Or at least I think it did. So 3 cheers for the Autoist of a yesteryear.